Hello everyone. I've had a couple of requests to do another one of my Mountain Rambles, which is taking you through my very large pile of unpainted figures and models that I've accumulated over the decades. So I've relented because I was finding these videos a little bit unsatisfactory for a number of reasons, but I'll carry on with them because they are kind of enjoyed by a small number of people out of my viewers, so I might as well carry on doing them and talk to you a little bit at the same time while you can get on with painting your figures or whatever. So taking another box out of the cupboard, and first up, this is just at random, this box I've chosen. We've got two boxes of what are described as universal spacecraft, which I got from a company called EM4 Miniatures. Well, I actually got three boxes, and I painted the contents of one box up a long time ago. I found these. I was quite pleased with these models. They do for a lot of. I used to play full thrust, and I thought they could be incorporated into that. Really, they have more of a. I don't know, they've almost got like a kind of reptilian look, some of them. Particularly this one, which has almost got like, well, look like pincers, a beetle or insect kind of looking creature. Some of them do look particularly alien. They look like alien spacecraft, and others look a bit more like they're kind of Terran kind of things, jet fighter type appearance to them. But the thing about space combat in general is that you can never really tell the scale of the vessel, so they haven't got a scale described on them. They could be little single-seater fighters, or they could be massive, great battleships housing thousands of crew. You could play them as either. But I never got around to painting these other two sets, partly because it's Ground Zero Games that do the official models for full thrust, and I like those models so much that there wasn't really a need to expand into other companies. But anyway, that's what I did. So rather than rush ahead through all these models, let's leave those out. I'll leave those there so you can be looking at those. Yeah, rather going full throttle into going through the contents of this box, let's just talk a little bit about why I was kind of hesitant about doing another one of these. It's a couple of reasons really. Partly, I do get myself a little bit kind of down when I look at all this stuff that I've just hoarded over the years. I am a terrible hoarder. I have got my reasons for doing it. One is that I thought long ago that I would spend, because I had my income was a lot better when I was younger, a lot higher, that I would spend my income that I had at the time on accumulating these models, so that when I got to my retirement and possibly might not be able to afford to buy them, I would have them there purchased already, and that has certainly helped me in my retirement. And another reason, which I think I've described this in these earlier rambles, is that I do get very anxious when I see a nice range of figures that they're not going to be around forever. And although I might not be involved in a particular project that would necessitate painting those figures at the time, I often think, yes, in future years I definitely do want to wargame that period, and it might not be the case that range is around, so that is another reason. But it does get me down a little bit, as I say, that I've got this massive lead mountain now. I mean, this is the third episode, and I'm barely scratching the surface of what I've got not locked away, but hidden away in cupboards and drawers and on shelves and all kinds of things. It's more than I will ever be able to paint in my lifetime, so in a way it's a little bit ridiculous. And the other thing is that I do find I am getting quite critical of my own YouTube content and of other YouTube content that I view as well. I really don't see the point of putting up videos just for the sake of it, putting up content that lacks content, which is what I kind of feel about these Mountain Ramble. They're really videos about nothing. But there is a certain type of YouTube content that I do watch where I can get on with my painting of my figures, my wargaming figures, and just have it on in the background. So hopefully that's what you're doing at the moment. But it does mean, because my channel isn't specifically wargaming related, it's going to be of absolutely no interest whatsoever to people who subscribe to me or view my channel for other reasons. And that opens another kind of topic of discussion in a way as well, is why do we have why do we have YouTube channels? I mean, a lot of my subscribers and a lot of my content is related to wargaming, and some just recently even some people have been remarking, and Leon 266 the classic one, that they use the YouTube channel to kind of keep up their kind of schedule of painting figures, that it helps them to continue to get their heads down and continue to paint their figures, because then they display the result of their painting. And those kind of videos I really enjoy. I like seeing how people have painted figures, but I'm not so keen on seeing half painted figures or unpainted figures, and that is precisely what I'm now showing you. So I've got this kind of reluctance to show you them, because they're not the sort of videos that I would like to watch, but they probably are the sort of videos, if they went on long enough, that I might have on in the background and just look up occasionally at the screen. But those type of videos where people are just showing, this is what I've got to paint and this is what I've half finished, they only tend to go on for about 5 or 10 minutes, which is barely enough for me to kind of get a layer of paint on a couple of figures, and then you've got to kind of root around and try and find some more content. And at the same time, there are channels that I subscribe to which have very kind of irregular content. So it might be 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months between one video and another, and that's because they don't want to put out this kind of stuff that I'm doing in front of you now. They want to have something to show you, or something else has overtaken them, you know, illness or change in circumstances, or they've got involved in something else, like, you know, a building project or something like that, you know, something that's not wargaming related. Whereas my channel, it's not specifically a wargaming channel, and therefore I put up a lot of content that a lot of wargamers aren't going to watch. But I regard my channel more as a kind of, it's sort of history themed. It's themed around the past, or history in the making even. But it does mean my audience is very kind of fragmented. And I mean, for instance, some of the things I most enjoy filming and putting up in my videos on Dartmoor, I mean, it gives me the opportunity to put up some, what I find is very viewable content without having to talk or do anything. So the more sort of muted I feel in not being able to express myself, I can express myself through my camera work up on Dartmoor, and I really enjoy putting those up, but they hardly get any viewers at all. And I have other videos that I put up, like recently I filmed HMS Queen Elizabeth, the Royal Navy's new aircraft carrier it's actually back today in Plymouth Sound. I can see it out my back window. It's back there again today, and I put that up, and within a week it's had over 800 views. But you can bet your bottom dollar that most of those views are people who were just scanning the internet for images of Royal Navy ships. They're not going to subscribe to my channel because the rest of the content isn't of any interest to them, and they're certainly not going to watch this kind of video, which is specifically related to wargaming. So I've got that kind of conundrum on my channel, that all the things I put up I would watch and I am interested in, but I'm sort of trying to draw in a very kind of disparate audience. But what do? Do you have regular content on a specific subject, 90% of which isn't really worth putting up? Or do you only put up very specific content very irregularly? Or do you put up a very diverse amount of material, and then certain subscribers only watch your channel very irregularly? I don't know what to do. But I of all the videos I put up, I am kind of least content with these in a way. Anyway, let's show you some more figures. I only glanced at the top of this crate of things, so I've only got a very vague idea of what's in here. But in this box here, you can see this contains lots and lots of things from Langton Miniatures, which are Napoleonic. Well, they do other things, but these are Napoleonic Age of Sail models, and I have got quite an extensive collection of painted models. They're 1/1200th scale. They paint up really fantastically. You can really go to town on them, do a nice job. But as you can see, got far more than I've ever got round to painting. And in particular, I did at one time buy a lot of these models, which I really like. These are sort of coastal models and forts and things. This is a model of, sorry, I've not been looking at the camera to make sure I'm on screen. Fort Chapeau, also known as Fort Louvois. Fortress model is suitable for the 18th and 19th centuries. So it comes in a number of pieces. I won't get it all out. Let's get the main piece out. But there's turrets and things. Look a bit like Martello Tower type fortifications, but they're probably a little bit early than that. I'm just going to turn the camera off and get something to help me open some of these packages. Alright, sorry, got a pair of scissors. So I think most of these models are still available from Langton Miniatures. Rod Langton's been around a long time now, produces some excellent models and scenery and so on. But you know, he's going to retire one day. He's older than I am, I think, and haven't seen him at any shows in a long time. So he probably only trades on the internet nowadays, and maybe he'll sell his products, you know, his range on to another company at some point. I don't know. But my attitude was, when I had the money, get things that I fancied and caught my eye, and then I've got them and I can paint them at my leisure. But I haven't done any painting of any Age of Sail kind of wargaming in quite a while now. I mean, this is another building here. This is a really nice one. Toulon Tower. So I think at one point Rod Langton actually had a model of virtually of the entire city, or at least the dockside representation of the whole of Toulon, because the British fleet obviously besieged it during the French Revolutionary Wars. It was where Napoleon first came to notice of the French government, because he was almost single-handedly responsible for frustrating the British siege and raising the siege of Toulon. He was originally an artillery officer. See, these kind of buildings are still around. Once built, they tend to stay there and then get incorporated into the later defences of forts and so on. Obviously, they wouldn't have, if you were trying to represent a modern day war game, you wouldn't kind of man the fort with these 18th and 19th century cannon, so that would be a problem. But the type of buildings are still there. I actually got two of those towers. There's another one there. And then most of these ships, I think, are kind of generic French. Yeah, NF is a French ship. That looks like a 120 gunner. Yeah, 120 French gun. I must have wrote at the time. Yeah, at the time I wrote, so I wouldn't forget. British 50 gun 2-deck. Got lots of little buildings, a Ravelin gatehouse and bridge. I did paint up a lot of buildings and tried to make a little waterside dock area, other buildings and so on. Let's put those away and get on to something else. Oh, lots of brass etched, what do they call them? I forgot. People tend to call them rat lines, but they're not. Shrouds, they're called shrouds. which he only introduced sort of fairly late on in his range. Before that, you had to kind of make your own. I used to use muslin, paint it black, and then cut it into shape, and that worked quite well. But these brass etched shrouds are much better because they support the masts in a way, and make the models a little bit sturdier. Somewhere, I don't know whether it's in this crate or not, I have got another selection of these models because I remember buying a lot of Spanish ships as well, so they must be somewhere. We might come across those shortly as we're going through. Put these away. And next, right, these are, right, now this is a case in point. I started and never finished a project to paint up a 28mm Mogul army. So the Moguls, the sort of the 6 great Moguls, dated from the very end of the 15th century through to the 18th century. So there were 6 of them, so if I can remember them: Babur, Humayun, Akbar, and then I always get them muddled up. There was Shah Jahan and Jahangir. I think Jahangir was first and then Shah Jahan. Shah Jahan was the Mughal who built the Taj Mahal for his wife, and then Aurangzeb. And Aurangzeb kind of runs into the early 18th century, and then the Moguls continued right up to the last one was in 1857, was deposed by the British after the Indian Mutiny, sent into exile in Burma, I believe. But from Aurangzeb onwards, the Mughal Empire kind of collapses in on itself. British and French and so on begin to nibble away at the edges of the empire. That they never succeed in conquering the sort of southern end of the Indian subcontinent, and they sort of fall into decline basically. Never really match the magnificence of the earlier Moguls. But Bearsden Miniatures, there weren't that many companies around who did ranges of Moguls. In fact, there still aren't that many. But Bearsden was a company in, I suppose, I don't know how you pronounce it, in Glasgow, called Bearsden. So they transferred that into Bearsden. There it is. That was, don't bother getting in touch with them because they know they're no longer around. And this is my whole point, that had I not purchased these figures at the time, I wouldn't own them, wouldn't possess them. And I did paint a few of them up. They're not, some of them are very, very nice indeed. Let's get some of the infantry out so you can see. I don't know whether that's going to focus or not. No, I have to zoom out a little bit just to get it focused. I mean, this will make, when I finally get around to it, this will make a magnificent army. you don't see many people wargaming in Mogul India, and yet it's a fascinating period. There's a guy kneeling with a drum there. This must be some kind of command set, I'm guessing. Yeah. Sort of leader figure pointing authoritatively, so I'm guessing that's the command pack. See, I'm never going to find out now, because Bearsden's sites went down a long time ago, and I've no idea what MOG 20 would have been, but so I'm just going to have to kind of guess when I find it. But the cavalry, anyway, I keep going but, never telling you. The cavalry is a little bit strange, because the horses are cast so that you have the lower body actually sculpted as one part with the horse. Now that solves one problem, which I was discussing the other day on one of my other videos, or not discussing it on the video, but in the commentary below it. I think it was Nigel or Dartman Eldridge was saying, he asked me if it was the Crimean War figures. He asked me whether they were the cavalry they put up was single cast or not, and I said they were, and I like that, because I was having great difficulty actually getting the with some figures that I was painting at that point in time, getting the separate riders to fit comfortably and realistically onto the horse models, because you could see gaps underneath the bottom and between the legs and so on. It just didn't look right. But this kind of solves one problem in a way. But the trouble was that you had the upper body that you had to kind of attach, and that in turn never really happily went together in such a way. I mean, I think you can see there, it doesn't look right, because the waist kind of overhangs the legs, and there's gaps and everything as well. Pinning them would have been even harder, because then once you drilled a hole for the pin into the lower and the upper part, then you're committed to positioning it in a certain way, and then you had to fill in the gaps with milliput or something like that, and it was a little bit awkward. I found that the kind of least satisfactory way. And one of the other things, like this guy was all right, because he's holding his lance or spear or whatever in a kind of upright position. That's just about focusing, isn't it? But if you look at this chap here, he's got a kind of couched lance, and I was finding that sometimes with the ones I did put together, the spear or the lance or whatever you put in his right hand was then snagging or not fitting, because it collided with the horse's side. So I found that very awkward. But anyway, they're still that apart. They're still very nice. Another thing that they didn't do, and I did regret, but I solved it another way, is that the Moguls tended to use bamboo for the shafts of their spears and lances and so on, and using wire spears just didn't work, because you can't replicate that kind of the nodules along the shaft of the bamboo. But I found, I think it was Redoubt do a range for Wellington in India, and they sell separate bamboo lances, so I bought a load of those. Again, they may turn up as we progress through this. What is already turning into a very long ramble. Sorry. I will try and speed up a little bit. I thought I wasn't going to have enough to talk about. Lots of archers, again really nice figures. And the other thing, the other thing about Mughal India and the wars against the Maharathas and so on, I just mentioned Ridout and their range of Wellington in India, but really these kind of figures, you can use them for periods right up to the early 19th century at least. Wellington's battles against Tipu's Sultan and the Maharatha wars and so on, or even later. I mean, some of these might even do for the Indian Mutiny or something like that. I remember War Games Foundry's Indian Mutiny range, which one day you will no doubt get to see, because most of it is still in my lead mountain. They actually had some figures who were decked out in old styles of armour and so on, showing that they had just grabbed to hand whatever weaponry and armour they had in there. They had to hand to go out and fight the British. I mean, there's loads in here. I think most of it is similar. Horses again, with the rider's legs sculpted, and again the colours and the styles on these horses that are kind of caparisoned with sort of lots of horse armour and so on. You can really go to town on that. They had really fantastic patterns and so on. There's not really nice cannon there, but excellent. Apologise if a lot of this is going to be out of focus because I'm not paying attention to the screen. Lovely, lovely cannon. It's obviously it's not on any kind of, there doesn't seem to be any identifiable way of moving this. It's not on wheels or anything, so it must have been dragged by elephants or something, or put on wheels and then placed in position. But that is gorgeous, really like that, and not out there anymore, so I've got one now. Never be able to get one again unless it came up on eBay or something. I can't see that happening very regularly. And the Moguls, of course, part of the reason why Babur was able to capture Delhi, conquer the last of the Delhi Sultanate armies, victory over them, was his use of muskets and cannon against the elephants of the Delhi Sultanate. Panipat, lots of battles at Panipat, but that was the one that Babur won in particular. Yeah, it's looking like there's just lots of different kind of cavalry in here now. Some armoured, some not. These look like mounted archers. Oh no, they're not. No, they're throwing spears or something, javelins or something like that. Oh, there's a leader. He looks lovely. Oh. This is another reason why I am very reluctant to get these things out. That the minute I touch them and feel them and that, I just want to prime them and paint them, but I just really have to kind of try and control myself, because I've got At the moment, I'm trying to discipline myself to just have 4 things on the go on my tabletop at any one time. And what I'm doing is I've one thing is always going to be the Crimean War. Until I've satisfied myself that I've got a Russian army and a British army complete, I'm just going to have that's going to be there on my tabletop for years. But I am determined that one day I will get to the end of it and finish it and be able to fight the Crimean War on the tabletop. So that's one. And then I thought, for the time being, I'm going to try and paint up some of my unpainted buildings. So that's going to allow me to kind of flip from very kind of sporadically from one period to another and feed my kind of constantly changing appetite for different historical periods. And then I'm always going to have something 15mm, that'll be the third, and something 28mm, that'll be the fourth. So when I get around to finishing what I'm painting at the moment in 28mm, then maybe I could get these out and paint a few of them up. But depending on my kind of penchant at the time. But that's the plan anyway. Oh, that looks like, yeah, that should have gone into the Napoleonic Age of Sail. Right. Now, next up, I think what you will find is that these are Moguls as well, because I didn't just buy one company. Oh no, these aren't. What are these? I've no idea what this rubbish is. Arts, crafts and design materials. Oh, I obviously bought some thread from them. Check that out anyway. These are more Langton miniatures. Oh right, yeah, so that's the thread that I used for the rigging. Yeah, so I've obviously left that in to remind myself where I got the thread from. But I don't think I'm going to need a reminder of that again. And then there's more Langton miniatures. Oh, these are bases, because he started selling bases, so they've got the rippled sea effect. Forgotten I have those. This is a 74 gun ship. Lots more brass etched. Got thousands of them. Shrouds. And in this box here, I think this I picked up from Tumbling Dice, because when the rules for Warhammer brought the rules for Trafalgar out, Tumbling Dice started doing little fleets, so they started marketing Langton miniatures. I mean, maybe they still do. And these are all the Spanish ships that I was telling you about that I bought. So I have painted a couple of these up, but I've still got quite a few to do. And they came complete with the brass etched shrouds and the bases and so on. That's quite useful in there. There's a little bit of instruction. This comes from the War Games, Miniature War Games magazine. I remember this. I've got this. So there's a painting guide and how to assemble the models and so on. It's all quite useful. So that's that. But I was going to say, I think in this box there are also, in this crate somewhere, there's going to be a lot more Mogul figures. So I tend to kind of pack things away that are more or less in the same area, then lose them for 50 years, or 30 anyway. Yeah, so these are Redoubt figures, and these are from the Wellington in India range, because these are perfectly usable for the Marathas, because their appearance and their armour and so on barely changed, you know, throughout the 16th, 17th and 18th centuries. So these would do just as well for Napoleonic times as they would for the Mogul area. One problem with these is it's a similar thing to those figures I was showing you earlier. Well, two problems really. One is that in order to supply you with a wide variety of poses and so on, they have separate torsos and legs. They do this with their Zulus as well. But it never really works for me. I mean, that pose and that just don't go together, do they? So you're obliged to kind of put it on to one particular or two particular types of lower leg, and then so you might as well cast the whole thing as one anyway. But they're not bad. And the other second problem with Redoubt is that they are so large that they're barely 28mm. They're getting close to 30mm, so they don't look right next to the others. But they've got some weird and wacky weapons. That guy's got some kind of club. That one I showed you earlier. He's got this really dramatic scimitar kind of thing in his right hand, but in his left he's got the classic Mogul era kind of, forget what it's called, but it's like a thrusting knife. It's got a handle and a grip that you hold, and then a very kind of short blade that you can just literally thrust into, penetrate armour and so on. And this guy here has got a bamboo spear attached to his hand already, but that's the sort of thing you want. It's something that's got the sort of knobbly nodules for it to look realistic. So a lot of work in putting those together and getting them to look reasonable, but they're nice figures. So I got a lot of those at the time. Nice looking command group here. Yeah, definitely must get around to painting these at some time, because you can really, you know, paint them up to look spectacular. And it would be an interesting period. I've always fancied wargaming Wellington in India. Got a book that I bought, must have been in the 1970s, JAC, that is, not completely Jack Weller, Wellington in India. A really interesting Battle of Uss, obviously the most notable one. That's the one that Sharp is always mentioning in the novels and on the film. These are the bamboo spears that I was telling you about. So these, I've got an excess of these so that I could use them on the Bear's Den miniatures as well. Oh, an elephant. I think this is quite a beast with the howdah and command figure sitting in it. Yeah, that would look great, wouldn't it? Look at that guy. He must be sitting in a kind of canopied howdah, yeah. Something like that with a canopy over the top of him. That would look fantastic painted up, wouldn't it? Oh, Ralphie, why do you do this to yourself? It's like constant kind of titillation. going back to that, you know, the butterfly thing again, isn't it, that we talk about. The lure. I think these figures, Redoubt's changed hands. I think it's Grubby Tanks who own them now. So they're not sold by the original company, but that range, this Wellington in India range, is still around, still available. So I didn't need to have got hold of them quite so early from that point of view. Oh, these look like, yeah, some cattle to pull the cannon, maybe. Lots more spears and shields and accessories of one kind or another. So there we go, there's some more Moguls. Next up is a bag containing, oh, something completely different. Some Old Glory ships. These look to me like this is right, yeah, I remember this. I've got a lot of their these are 1/600th scale pre-dreadnought models, and I've got a lot of the Russo-Japanese War painted up and so on. They're not bad, it's just that the scale makes anything from the Russo-Japanese War onwards very difficult to play on a reasonable sized table. But I did have in mind to paint up some other nations' ships, and just to use the Seekrieg 5 rules to play a few games, but I never got around to painting these. So this is the Uss Maine from 1895. This is the one that exploded in Havana Harbour, provoking the Spanish-American War of 1898. This is the Henri IV, a French ship from 1899. This one is HMS Hood from 1893. I've got them. I don't know whether I'll ever get around to painting those, but they're probably going to sit out their lives waiting for me to die, so that someone does a house clearance, and maybe they'll go on to a company, a person who will take an interest in them. Right, in another box with more Moguls, and these are more from Bear's Den Miniatures by the look of it. Yeah. Oh, so I've got some elephants with Bear's Den as well. Show you what one of those looks like. In fact, there's quite a lot of elephants in here. This might be the elephant contingent. So although the Moguls primarily relied on musketry, cannon, and so on, they did take elephants up and use them in warfare. So it's quite legit to field a few elephants. I mean, they're useful as command stands, like that one I showed you from the Wellington in India range from Redoubt. But this is a war elephant for actually fighting from. Really nicely armoured. That armour is, I think it might be in the Leeds Armoury now. Yeah, I think it is, but it used to be in the Tower of London. One of the Moguls gifted a whole set of elephant armour, and it still belongs in the Royal Armouries. It's still there, and that looks very much like like this is modelled on that. So there's a guy obviously thrusting down with some kind of long spear. Doesn't come with the spear. So he's sat maybe at the rear. Got another chap with some kind of nasty looking clubbing type weapon. And a guy, so maybe this is the guy at the front directing the elephant. And this chap seems to have a musket of some sort. So there's 3 people on the... He might be at the rear actually. He looks more like he's sort of suited to fitting on the downward slope of the elephant. But, you know, something to think about doing in a couple of years' time maybe, when I've cleared the desk a little bit. Or, these are musketeers. More musketeers. More musketeers, more musketeers. And another elephant which looks the same kind of armour. I won't get that out. And this isn't all because I know somewhere else, it must be, I can't see it, I don't think it's going to come up in this video, but I know I've got a lot of models from a company called Indus, who do a lot of Mahabharata, which would do as the opponents for the Moguls. I know I've got a lot of those somewhere. Right. What's in here? Oh, right, Peter Pig. These are... So I've got a lot of models painted up, and I do play a Peter Pig game called Hammer in Iron, which is an American Civil War riverine game, some sort of hex system, and this is clearly what I never got round to modelling. Camera up a little bit so you can see that. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ironclads that I've never put together. This has got this is sort of wheel driven paddle steamer type, yeah, and that one is too. So I might, yeah, you know, I've got the models to play with already, so this maybe one day I'll just add to them by painting these up. They're very nice, nothing wrong with them. I've obviously put them in with this, as I say, I do try and keep vaguely related things together, so I've got those pre-dreadnoughts from Old Glory and the Langton Age of Sail and in a way the spaceships. So there's a very kind of nautical theme to some of the contents of this box, nautical or Mogul. Right, there at the bottom here, I've got 2 more boxes to show you. This is some more micro armour. No idea what that's in there. These are Israeli Ben Gurion Centurions and things. So they're sort of probably the Arab-Israeli war or something I was intending to do in micro armour. Finally, there's a box of these irregular. Oh, right, okay. These are all, not all. Oh my word. Right, they're all, a lot of them loose. Ooh, useful to know. Right, these are all irregular Moguls, not Moguls, Mongols. Which, oh god, there's hundreds of them. Some of these figures, I don't, in general, I'm not keen on irregular, because some of the castings make the figures look grotesque. But in terms of their Mongol armies, I really like the ponies in particular. I mean, I have lectured you before about ponies in warfare and how too many ranges have Mongols who are depicted on stallions and mighty beasts and so on. And they really, you know, they had about 4 or 5 ponies per per man, and they really moved on these ponies, which are a lot smaller than, you know, the kind of horses that most figures are shown on. But look at the trouble I'm having just trying to. This is what I'm saying about the separate riders and horses, that it's so hard to get them to fit together. I don't think this. I think some of these aren't irregular as well. You know, I think some of these I got from. They look more like a company called Warrior, who are still selling very cheap armies. These are kind of the Korean type shields and dress, archers and so on. So there's not just irregular in here. Yeah, having great difficulty getting him to sit. Just about does with that. There we go. But when I went a minute ago was because you very rarely see ranges that produce these spears, which are typical of what the Mongols use. They have a kind of hook to kind of snag the opponent and pull him off his horse. And these are definitely from a company that no longer exists. I know, I bought hundreds of them at the time, you know, dreading them going out of business. And I think they were called BB or B&B. There is another company out there now that's got a very similar name, but it's not the same. And they did 2 types of spear, one with the tassel kind of hanging that way and one with it hanging down, so you can have figures that are holding the spear upright, and others that got the lance couched. So I got loads of those so I could use them on any range rather than wire spears, which work all right in some cases, in some circumstances. Armies did have very thin, narrow lances or spears, but a lot of times there was a very specific look, like the bamboo lances of the Moguls. And like the Mongol lances with the hook on them. Yeah, you know. But I kind of stopped painting up Mongols, and I mean, again, this is just one box, and I know I got tins and tins of ranges of Mongols unfinished, unpainted. These are the irregular, I recognise these are the irregular Koreans. Not particularly attractive. That's what I was saying about irregulars. Sometimes they're very kind of crudely cast at times, and they do look a little bit squat and weird kind of facial appearance and so on. I don't know whether, I'm not going to rip this and get it out, but this is oh yes, I am. I'll try and undo it gently so I don't have to replace the bag. But this is from Irregular. This is the Mongol Camp. They do little kind of almost like diorama, and I've already painted up this group of figures, so why I got another group as well, I don't know. But these are almost copycat replicas of the Mongols that are depicted in the Osprey Mongol book. Yeah, again, I'm just going to turn the camera off and I'm going to go out the book and show you. Right, here we go. So this is the quite an early Osprey publication, the Mongols, Men at Arms Series 105. And in here there are quite a few images which are virtually the same figure. So I'm sure they've drawn their inspiration from this book. So that figure there is slightly different, but the kind of reference is very obvious because he's got two captured figures in kind of Islamic headgear. There they are, with these kind of notched branches that they've used to kind of tie them, and that's those two guys there. Very clearly kind of a reference to that plate in the Osprey book. Can't really show you very well, my hand's in the way. And lots of children and so on, you know, as depicted there. So maybe I got them just because I like them so much. Irregular, as I say, they are very kind of hit and miss. You know, so I think their Mongols are really well designed and portrayed, but a lot of the figures, it must be something to do with the casting. They just look very weird. They look a bit, you know, grotesque. But in terms of Mongols, irregular, I can recommend them for authenticity and a realistic look to them and so on. Realistic ponies. And as you know, I'm really into my authenticity in wargaming. While I was upstairs looking for this, I also found, so I'd get that down as it's relevant to what I've been showing you, the Osprey Mogul India Men at Arms publication, 1504 to 1761. So 1504 must be, I think that's the year that the Battle of Panipat. Let's have a look, see if I got it right. Oh, and there's the armour that I was showing you earlier, the elephant armour that's in the Royal Armouries. It's got Tower of London there, but I'm pretty sure it's up in Leeds now. Battle of Panipat, there must be a chronology in here. Come on, Ralph. Chronology. 1504, Babur occupies Kabul. Right, okay, so Panipat must be later than that then. Yeah, 1550, no, hang on. Second Battle of Panipat. Yeah, 1526, Babur defeats Sultan Ibrahim Lodi of northern India at the First Battle of Panipat and occupies Delhi as the first Mughal ruler. So the Mughal reign in India began in 1526 then. But yeah, it's just to show you how nicely, how you can really go to town on the painting of those figures. Maybe that's one of the things that put me off at the time, that I wasn't satisfied with my painting. And I was going to come back to them when my skills had improved. So another reason why it's always worth getting things early. Oh no, left out. Back in. Not much, there's only a couple of little bits and pieces to show you now, and then this video will be complete. few more irregular Mongols. Nothing to really special about them. The wicker shields that the Korean auxiliaries used. Yeah, same again, but these are a bit odd. I'm not sure what these are doing in there. Lots of planes from, I think from Heroic and Ross, I think they are. Some tiny, tiny little, I don't know whether they're spears or javelins or what they're meant to be and why they're in there. And this must have been free with a magazine or something. It's a Warlord Games Roman, not Centurion, Legionary, made by Renedra, Warlord Games 2008. No idea why that's in there. I must have been desperate just to put it away out of sight somewhere. It's just a freebie that I'm probably never likely to paint. And yeah, that is the end of that crate. So I'll cut the video at that point, and as I say, I hope if you've stuck with it, then you've obviously found something to interest you. But I find these sort of, they're useful for just passing the time while you're painting, and hopefully I've been able to talk a little bit about history just by picking things up at random, but they're not the most worthwhile of videos to make or put up, I think. But anyway, having said that, hope you enjoyed it. See you again on the next video. Bye for now.